A very good morning to you all. We have a strict chairman, and we should have. And so without much ado, I'll just begin by thanking this organization, ICICH, and Professor Padhi for inviting me here. And I'm very glad that I decided to come, and it's such a learned occasion, and very happy that Orissa has organized this thing. So the theme of the panel today is Medieval World, Slowdown of Kalinga's Relation with Southeast Asia. Now, I thought of revisiting the slowdown during the period of the transition from the early medieval to the medieval. So the title of my presentation is Revisiting the Slowdown, or is it really a slowdown? Yesterday we learned about the different ways Kalinga had its relations with Southeast Asia through different connectivities, and I'm like land, sea, objects, people, knowledge system, art, iconography, epigraphy. I'm not going into the details. We all know that there is a rich body of literature which traces the nature of this longue durée interaction in various ways, and Hermann Kuhlke's thesis rather implicitly argues in favor of the existence of a Bay of Bengal community which adhered to certain common traditions and cultural practices with more space for indigenous initiative and was the same historical development. The region of Kalinga, or the Andhra Kalinga, this entire region, falls within this Bay of Bengal community as the other regions of Southeast Asia. The question is, why are we talking of slowdown? And when we see that from the 11th to the 14th century, we have two very important port sites which yielded a lot of materials which could boast of maritime linkages. So we have the sites of Kalingapatnam, the sites of, like we have, for this period, we have Kalakattapattana, Manikpattana, and we have scholars here who will be talking about this, and we have largely drawn upon this. Of course, the site of Palur, which is very important, and it has a longue durée existence, will be talked about in the excavator is here too. And then there is another site which deserves our attention, that is Gaurangapattana, but it has not given us much more report, but we have the presence of turquoise glazeware, which talks about the Persian connection. Professor Vasa, we are waiting to hear more about Gaurangapattana from you because you were with it. So I will not waste time in describing, because archaeology is one of the theme, and here in the presentation I had a section where I was talking about the different kind of artifacts that were found or unearthed from Kalakattapattana and Manikapattana, and which gives us an idea of the wide range of connectivity to the west and to the east, and not only Southeast Asia but through China also, because of the different kinds of like celadon ware, glazed ware, blue potteries and others. But we don't have time, so I'm not going into that. What is interesting is that we have certain numismatic exchanges also between this period, and stamware shirts from Kota, China, North Sumatra, Johor Lama, Malaysia. And we are not, when we look at the artifacts of these sites, it does not merely talk about the maritime connections, it also talks about the inner connections, the intra-region linkages. And therefore, there are linkages with Periyapattanam, Kottapattanam, so these kinds of ware were very much into circulation. When we go to Manikpattana also, which was a major port, and it continued, there was a hiatus in between, but it continued till very long time. There also we find potteries and copper coins of Sri Lankan rulers and all that. Striking is the presence of an Indo-Arab stone anchor, which has been studied by Sila Tripathi here. So with this brief sketch of the important ports like Kalakapattana, Manikapattana, I'm going also to talk about a little bit briefly about another port in Sri Lanka, which perhaps had a very strong linkage with this region, and that is the port of Mantai, Mahatitha, which played a significant role in the Bay of Bengal network. It was the most active port of Sri Lanka and was located close to the Aruvi River, which linked the port to the inland capital of Anuradhapura. There we have inscriptions which talks of, or the text which talks of merchants who are very rich. They stay in pasadas and other things, elite merchants, not going into that. Merchants were known as Vanija Kumara. But what is important here is that the archaeological evidence from the excavation of Mantai supports the textual and epigraphic accounts of Mahatitta of being a port where merchants of various regions converged. Apart from that, in the 13th century, a singer, Bhagala Devi, daughter of Ajja Kesavadeva of Singhala Desa, donated a perpetual lamp to the temple of Sri Kurmam. Sri Kurmam was originally in this Andhra Kalinga place, it's near Srikakulam. So we have the presence of Chinese, West Asian and Indian merchants at Mantai, and which implied the continued presence of merchants traversing the port. I'm not very sure, but can we imagine that, is it possible to imagine that Khalakapattana and Manikapattana could have been the transshipment point for ports like Mantai and others, and then finally go to China. So both from the Arab West Asian traders when they were journeying into China. Then I was talking about something about Khalakapattana also and its linkages. But now if we move on to the epigraphic records of Odisha, we find there is a change. In the early historic period, the epigraphic records don't talk much about traders. We have little reference, and what is very striking is that in spite of having such a wonderful coastline, the Orissan inscriptions don't talk of Navikas or Mahanavikas as the inscriptions from Andhra talk about. For example, we have Ghantasala, we have reference to Mahanavika. We have a place called Ahadanakaram, which refers to 5 Mahanavikas, Mahasarthavahas. So that is an enigma here. But when we come into the early medieval period, if we look at the inscriptions, we see that there are lots of Sreshtis. These are rich merchants. We have Vaniks and a whole lot of markets. And among these markets, one market is called Penta, which is a middle category market organization. So we have the Pattana, we have Penta, and then we have Hatta, which is the village level market. And there, I'll just refer to one inscription from Mukhalingam, and where we have, it's a 12th century inscription. Vasana Maharaja, along with his wife Machapa Nayakani, gave a perpetual lamp and 5 maras, these were gold coins, were deposited with the oilman Nakuma belonging to Choraganga Penta in order to meet the expenses towards the maintenance of the said lamp. So this Choraganga Penta was located somewhere in the surroundings of Nagara. And so this kind of went, so why I'm talking about this? I'm talking about these merchants, markets, because then it doesn't give us an idea of slowdown. It doesn't talk, it talks of prosperity, it doesn't talk of some kind of decay. But what happens is that when did the question therefore is, when did the slowdown take place? And then if we proceed to the later centuries, we find a larger shift from the Andhra Kalinga coast to the Coromandel coast. Coromandel coast was active from the very beginning, from the early historic period, but this shift takes place between the 13th, 14th and the 15th century. And what happens is that within this wider Indian Ocean network, commercial network, Srivijaya and the Cholas and the Coromandel coast, because of the port facilities. So we have experts here to talk on the port facilities, and powerful navies became the leading transshipment centers and beneficiaries of the lucrative transit trade. Another important development after the 10th century was the increased influence of merchant guilds comprising Arab, Tamil, eventually Chinese traders, all of whom used Southeast Asian ports as the primary basis in this Indian Ocean commerce. The entry of the Chinese traders into the shipping and trading networks of the South China Sea and the Bay of Bengal circuits had significant impact on the patterns of maritime commerce between China, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. Traders from China were able to make direct trips to the South Asian coast, a fact witnessed by the famous Ibn Battuta. And here I would like to mention that a port becomes a very remarkable port when it gets mentioned in textual sources, in epigraphy. So for us, the source is important. And here we find that though Ibn Battuta talks of Utkala, he is not very vocal about, I had read carefully the Rihala, and I found that the kind of importance that the Malabar coast gets, the ports of the Malabar coast port gets in his writing, or even Bengal, Chittagong, Harikand, then he comes to Kamrupa, he goes to Srihatta, then he talks about Quilon. So this kind of reference is not found in Ibn Battuta. He rather talks about Faknar, Karnataka coast, Sri Lanka, China, and of course, as I mentioned, Malabar. And here we have to also think of the political situation. The Pandyas were in the Coromandel coast and were very active during the 13th century. Later on, Vijayanagar became powerful. They were engaged in vigorous horse trade in the Western Indian Ocean, the Persian Gulf in particular. Thus, attention was shifted to the far south, and the conflicts of the regional powers led them to get horses from the west. So the attention shifted. 10 minutes done? Okay. Yeah, I'm at the end only. So what we find is that we do not have here, my argument is that we do not have course like, barring one reference to Kamala Vana Vanika Sthana, which do not come across such terms as Mahanavika, Mahasarthava, which I mentioned, Pattana Swami or Sri Setti Pattana Swami. So ports like, even though ports like Manikapattanam, Khalakapattanam were there, but there was perhaps no organized merchant group to carry on long distance trade like we have in the Coromandel coast. Because these merchant organizations in the south were regularly issuing inscriptions and declaring the voyages. For example, the Baru's inscription, it talks of the voyage from the Tamil, from South Baru's in Indonesia to different areas, the Nana Desis moving around. So these made their presence felt. Unfortunately, the merchants from Odisha did not or could not do that. So what we find, my last point is what I'm arguing for, that all these factors indicate not decline, but rather a lack of interest in the overarching mercantile network in Southeast Asia, China, and Arab traders to hold on to the mercantile profile of the well-crafted, like in early historic period, the mercantile profile was well-crafted, and in this case, the lack of mercantile organizations for propaganda of their maritime exploits were not there. And that perhaps led to the, I wouldn't say decline totally or slow down, but say the rather indifferent attitude towards the ports, even though the ports existed by the authors of different, the Arab authors or in epigraphic studies. Thank you very much.